The message came through channels that had been silent for 700 years. Ambassador was working late in her office when her console began to hum with a frequency no human had heard in centuries. She dropped her coffee cup. It shattered on the floor, but she did not notice. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the receiver. The sound that filled her office was like crystal bells singing in the wind, beautiful and broken at the same time. They were calling. Every human child knew the story of the. It was taught in schools across 1,000 worlds. It was written in monuments and sung in songs. It was the story of how humanity survived when they should have died. In the year 2156, humanity sent their first ship to the stars. The Exodus Dawn carried 12,000 people toward a new home. These were brave people, hopeful people. They left behind everything they knew to find a future among the stars. For 3 years they traveled through the empty darkness between suns. Then the reactor failed. The ship went dark. Power systems died one by one. The people of the Exodus Dawn huddled together in the cold as their air slowly ran out. They sent distress signals into the void, but no one answered. No human ship could reach them in time. They were alone, dying in the dark between stars. They had 43 days of oxygen left. After that, 12,000 humans would become 12,000 frozen bodies drifting forever through space. But something heard their call. They were an ancient species. They were beings made of living crystal, tall and beautiful, their bodies singing with harmonic frequencies that served as their language. They had traveled the stars for millions of years before humans learned to make fire. They were making their great migration, a journey they undertook only once every 300 years, when they detected the small, desperate signal from the dying human ship. They had no reason to help. Humans had nothing to offer them. These strange, soft creatures from a small blue world were not allies, not trading partners, not anything at all to the. Helping them would mean changing course, delaying their sacred migration, spending resources on beings they had never met. They helped anyway. They towed the Exodus Dawn to a habitable world. They gave the humans water and minerals. They adjusted the planet's orbit by a tiny fraction of a degree, just enough to give the humans stable seasons so they could grow food. They asked for nothing in return. When the humans tried to thank them, tried to offer some payment or promise, they simply sang a gentle song of farewell and continued on their long journey into the deep galaxy. The humans of the Exodus Dawn survived. They built a colony. They called their new home gratitude, and they told their children what they had done. Those children told their children, and those children told theirs. 700 years passed. Humanity spread across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. They built great ships and mighty cities. They became who could reshape worlds and engineers who could move stars. But they never forgot. Now, as listened to the broken song coming through her console, she understood why they had finally called. The message was fragmented and weak, but its meaning was clear. They were dying. There, a place called Resonance Prime was being destroyed by something they called a frequency plague. Their sun had begun emitting discordant sounds that shattered their crystalline bodies. Billions had already died. The survivors had only decades left before their entire species would be gone forever. They were not asking for help. The message was simply a farewell, a final song to let the galaxy know that they had existed. They did not expect anyone to save them. They were too far away, in a region of space no other species had ever explored. They were simply saying goodbye. Saved the message and contacted the High Council of the United Human Confederacy. Within 6 hours, the leaders of human civilization had gathered, played the message for them. The room was silent as the broken crystal song filled the air. When it ended, Admiral Wei was the first to speak. She was an old woman with gray hair and steady eyes. Her great-great-grandmother had been a child on the Exodus Dawn. "They are in trouble," she said. "The Who saved us." No one needed to say anything more. There was no debate. There was no discussion of costs or resources or whether it was practical to help. Every person in that room had grown up hearing the story. Every person in that room knew what humanity owed. The High Chancellor stood. "We will send a message to every human world," she said. "We will tell them what has happened. We will ask for volunteers." "With respect, Chancellor," said a young aide, "their world is beyond the galactic frontier. The journey alone will take years. The resources required will be enormous, and we do not even know if we can help them." The Chancellor smiled sadly. "Young man," she said, "when the Exodus dawned, they did not know if they could help either. They did not calculate costs or measure resources. They simply helped because helping was the right thing to do. They gave us everything when we were nothing. Now it is our turn." She looked around the room at the assembled leaders of humanity. "We will not fail them," she said. "Humanity remembers its debts, and we always pay them back." The message went out that night. It traveled across human space at the speed of light, reaching colony after colony, world after world. It carried the story of the Exodus dawn and the broken song of the dying. It asked for nothing. It demanded nothing. It simply reminded humanity of a kindness given 700 years ago and asked if anyone wanted to help repay it. The response began within hours. From every corner of human civilization, the answer came back the same. Ships were prepared. Resources were gathered. Volunteers stepped forward by the millions. Scientists abandoned their work to study biology. Engineers began designing solutions to problems they did not fully understand yet. Ordinary people donated what they could and asked how they could help. Humanity was going to save the. They did not know if it was possible. They did not know what it would cost. They knew only that a kind species was dying, and that this species had once saved them when no one else would. That was enough. That was all the reason humanity had ever needed. They had shown them kindness in the dark. Now humanity would answer with the full might of their civilization. Some debts are never forgotten, and humanity always pays. The word spread across human space like fire across dry grass. On mining colonies in the outer reaches, workers put down their tools and gathered around screens to hear the message. On pleasure worlds where the wealthy lived in comfort, donations poured in before the broadcast finished. On military stations and research outposts and farming planets and factory moons, the response was the same. Humanity had been called to remember, and humanity remembered. The first ships launched within a week. From the terraforming core came 17 planet-shaping vessels. These were massive ships, each one large enough to carry a small city inside its hull. They had been built to remake dead worlds into living ones, to create atmospheres from nothing and turn poison into breathable air. Their crews had spent their lives making homes for humanity on worlds that nature never meant for life. Now they would use those same skills to save a species that was not their own. From the Stellar Engineering Division came the Prometheus Array. These were the rarest and most powerful ships in human space, designed to work with stars themselves. They could adjust a sun's output, extend its life, even move it to a new location if given enough time. There were only 23 such ships in existence. 20 of them volunteered for the mission. But the professional fleets were only the beginning. Cargo ships arrived from every trade route in human space. Their captains emptied their holds of commercial goods and filled them instead with food, medical supplies, and building materials. Mining corporations donated entire asteroids' worth of refined metals. Energy companies sent fusion cores and power generators. A shipyard in the system stopped building commercial vessels and began constructing new ships specifically for the rescue mission. The volunteers came by the thousands, then the tens of thousands, then the millions. Engineers who had retired decades ago came out of retirement. Young students abandoned their studies to join the mission. Doctors and nurses signed up to provide medical care for a species whose biology they did not understand. Factory workers and farmers and teachers and artists, all of them stepping forward, all of them asking the same question: how can I help? Admiral Wei was given command of the fleet. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Remembrance, and watched the ships gather. Every day brought more. Every hour brought new volunteers. The assembly point they had chosen was a dead system at the edge of known space, empty except for a cold red sun and a few lifeless rocks. Within 6 months, it held more ships than most humans had ever seen in one place. 47,000 vessels, 19 million crew members, the largest humanitarian fleet in human history. Walked through the corridors of her ship and met with captains and commanders from across the fleet. They were not soldiers going to war. They were rescuers going to save the dying. Their weapons were terraforming equipment and stellar engineering tools and medical supplies. Their enemy was a natural disaster that was killing a peaceful species far from home. "Some of you will not come back," told them in her address to the fleet. "The journey is long, the work will be dangerous. We do not even know if we can succeed. But we go anyway because 700 years ago they did not ask if they could succeed. They simply helped. We will do the same." The fleet launched on a cold morning by Earth Standard Time. The journey took 2 years. They lay beyond the frontier, in a region of space that no human had ever explored. There were no supply stations, no friendly ports, no rescue ships waiting if something went wrong. They were traveling into the unknown, following only the coordinates hidden in that broken song. Along the way, they lost ships. A stellar anomaly destroyed 3 vessels in an instant, their crews gone before they could even send a distress signal. Equipment failures took others. A navigational error sent one ship into a gravity well it could not escape. 93 ships were lost on the journey. 2,417 humans died before they even reached their destination. The fleet did not turn back. The survivors held memorial services and continued forward. During the long journey, the scientists worked. They studied everything humanity had ever recorded about them. They analyzed the fragment of the distress call, trying to understand the frequency plague that was killing them. They developed theories and built prototypes and argued about solutions. None of them knew if their ideas would work. All of them kept trying anyway. In her private quarters, Admiral kept a small crystal on her desk. It had been passed down through her family for 7 generations, a gift from an elder to her great-great-grandmother on the day the Exodus Dawn was saved. The crystal hummed with a gentle frequency when she held it, a single note of thanks frozen in time. Sometimes, late at night when she could not sleep, would hold the crystal and listen to that ancient song. "We're coming," she would whisper to it. "We remember we're coming." 2 years after they launched, the fleet emerged from their final jump and saw Resonance Prime for the first time. It was beautiful and terrible. The planet had once been covered in crystal spires that reached toward the sky like frozen music. Now those spires were cracked and broken. Great cities lay in ruins. The air itself seemed to vibrate with wrong notes, discordant sounds that made the human crews feel sick even through their ships' hulls. And the sun burned with a poisoned light, sending waves of killing frequency down onto the world below. 19 million humans looked upon the dying world and its dying people. They saw a species that had saved humanity when humanity was nothing, now facing extinction with no hope of rescue. They saw cities that had sung with life for millions of years, now falling silent forever. Admiral opened a channel to the entire fleet. Her voice was steady, but those who knew her could hear the emotion underneath. "We have arrived," she said. "They are dying, but we did not come all this way to watch them die. We came to save them. Every world we have terraformed, every star we have touched, every impossible thing humanity has ever done, it has all led to this moment. We know what to do, we know what we owe, now let us pay our debt." 47,000 ships began their approach to the wounded world. The rescue had begun. Elder Harmonist stood at the entrance of the dampening caves and watched the lights appear in the sky. He was old, even by standards. His crystalline body had weathered 10,000 years. He remembered the great songs of his people when they filled the air with music so beautiful that even the stones seemed to dance. He remembered the shining cities, the crystal spires that caught the light of their sun and turned it into rainbows. He remembered what his world had been before the plague. Now he watched his people die. The frequency plague had come without warning. Their sun, which had nurtured life on Resonance Prime for billions of years, began to sing a wrong note. The discordant frequency spread through the planet's crystal structures like poison through blood. Bodies shattered. Buildings collapsed. The great songs that had echoed across the world for millions of years fell silent one by one. 12 billion had lived on Resonance Prime. Now fewer than 8 million remained, hiding in caves lined with dampening material that blocked the killing frequencies. They could not grow. They could not sing. They could only wait for death. Had sent the farewell message himself. He expected nothing to come of it. They had no allies, no friends, no one in the galaxy who might care that they were dying. The message was simply a tradition, a final song to mark their passing. He thought no one would hear it. But now ships filled the sky. Thousands of ships, more ships than had ever seen. They were not vessels. They were not ships he recognized at all. They were strange and angular and built for beings that were not made of crystal. For a long moment did not understand. Then slowly an old memory stirred. He had been young then, barely 1,000 years old. He remembered the broken ship drifting in the dark between stars. He remembered the soft, warm creatures inside, dying slowly as their air ran out. He remembered the decision to help them, to tow their vessel to safety, to give them a chance at life. The humans had come. The first shuttle landed outside the dampening caves, walked forward to meet it, his crystalline body singing a muted song of caution and wonder. The shuttle door opened, and a female human stepped out. She was small and soft, wrapped in a protective suit that shielded her from the discordant frequencies. She approached and spoke. Her voice was translated by a device at her throat, turned into harmonic frequencies that could understand. "I am ambassador of the United Human Confederacy," she said. "We received your message. We have come to help." Was silent for a long moment. 700 years had passed since the saved those humans. To him, it felt like yesterday. To humanity, it was the stuff of legend. Yet here they were, millions of them, crossing the galaxy to repay a kindness given to their ancestors. "Why have you come?" he asked at last. "We are dying. Our sun has turned against us. There is nothing anyone can do." The human ambassador smiled. It was a strange expression on a soft face, but understood its meaning. "You saved us," she said simply. "We remember." Over the following days, human scientists and engineers met with surviving scholars. They shared knowledge and studied the frequency plague together. The humans asked endless questions about biology, about their crystal structures, about the harmonics that gave them life. They took samples and ran tests and argued with each other about theories and solutions. The truth they discovered was terrible. The plague was not truly alive. It was a cascading failure in the fundamental harmonics of the sun. Something had destabilized the star's core, causing it to emit frequencies that were poison to crystalline life. The plague could not be cured because it was not a disease. It was simply the wrong note in a cosmic song, and that wrong note was killing everything it touched. They had known this. They had spent decades trying to find a solution, but their technology was built on harmony, on working with natural frequencies. They did not know how to fight a star. When the human scientists presented their findings to Admiral, she asked a single question. "Can we fix it?" The lead scientist, a woman named Doctor, was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "Theoretically, yes. We would need to use the Prometheus array to reach into the star's core and correct the harmonic instability. It would take years. It would be the largest stellar engineering project in human history. It might not work. People will die trying." "But it's possible," said. "It's possible." Turned to Ambassador. Tell the what we plan to do. When explained the plan to, the ancient did not believe her at first. Fix the star, reach into the heart of their sun and correct a harmonic failure that had been spreading for decades. The idea was beyond understanding. Stars were not things to be repaired. Stars were eternal and untouchable. You do not understand, saying. What you describe is impossible. Stars cannot be fixed like broken machines. Smiled again. We've been fixing stars for 300 years, she said. We've ignited dead suns to warm frozen worlds. We've extended the lives of dying stars by centuries. Once, we moved an entire star to save a colony that was about to be destroyed. It took us 50 years, but we did it. Song fell silent. He looked up at the poisoned sky, at the sun that was killing his people. You would do this for us, he asked. You would reshape a star to save beings you barely know. You saved us when we were dying in the dark, replied. You asked for nothing, you simply helped. Now we will do the same. We will not let you die. The old stood in the entrance of the caves for a long time, watching the human ships fill his sky. For the first time in decades, something that felt like hope began to sing in his crystal heart. The humans had come, and they intended to reshape heaven itself to save his people. The work began on a morning that held no dawn. 20 stellar engineering vessels took position around the sun. They formed a ring of impossible machines, each one capable of manipulating gravity and matter at scales that would have seemed like magic to humanity's ancestors. Between them, they wove a web of energy that reached down into the heart of the star itself. Admiral watched from the bridge of the remembrance. On her screens, she could see the sun burning with its poisoned light. Somewhere deep inside that inferno, a harmonic instability was sending waves of death across the entire system. Her engineers were going to reach into that fire and fix it. Begin first calibration sequence, she ordered. The Prometheus array came to life. Gravitational fields bent space itself. Exotic matter projections reached toward the star's surface. The work was slow and precise, measured in fractions of measurements too small for human eyes to see. A single mistake could destabilize the star completely. A single error could kill every living thing in the system. The engineers worked in shifts that lasted 12 hours each. They slept in their chairs when they could not stay awake any longer. They ate meals without tasting them. They spoke to each other in clipped sentences full of numbers and coordinates. Every one of them knew that the lives of millions depended on their steady hands. Meanwhile, on the surface of Resonance Prime, the terraforming ships began their own mission. Giant machines descended through the poisoned atmosphere, filtering out discordant frequencies as they went. They deployed atmospheric processors that hummed with counterharmonics, creating pockets of clean air where could exist without pain. Engineers in protective suits walked among the shattered crystal cities, setting up dampening fields and emergency shelters. The work was dangerous. The frequency plague attacked anything crystalline, and human equipment was full of crystal components. Machines broke down constantly. Power systems failed. Communication devices shattered without warning. And then there were the humans themselves. Doctor was among the first to notice the symptoms. He had been working on the surface for 3 months, helping to construct dampening fields around a population center. One morning, he woke up with a strange feeling in his bones, a kind of stiffness, a faint ringing in his ears that would not go away. The medical team examined him and found crystals forming in his bone marrow. The frequency plague could not truly infect humans. Their soft biology was too different from crystal structures, but prolonged exposure to the discordant frequencies was causing their bodies to change. Minerals in their blood and bones were slowly crystallizing. The process would take years to complete, but it would shorten their lives significantly. When the news spread, Admiral expected people to request transfers back to the fleet, away from the dangerous surface work. Instead, volunteers increased. How much time will I lose? asked a young engineer named David when he was told of the risks. "We don't know exactly," the doctor replied. "Perhaps 10 years, perhaps 20. It depends on exposure." Nodded slowly. 10 years off my life," he said. "That gave my ancestors a chance to have any life at all. Seems like a fair trade to me." He returned to work the next morning. Stories like his spread across the fleet. Humans who knew the cost continued to volunteer. They worked on the surface in the poisoned air, knowing that every day was taking time from their lives. They did not complain. They did not ask for special recognition. They simply did what needed to be done. In the depths of space, the Prometheus array continued its careful work. Month after month, year after year, they reached into the star and adjusted its song note by note. It was like tuning an instrument the size of 1,000,000 Earths, an instrument that burned at temperatures that could vaporize anything human hands could build. Ships were lost. A gravitational pulse destroyed 2 engineering vessels before anyone could react. A solar flare killed the entire crew of a third. Accidents and equipment failures took others. The roster of the dead grew longer with each passing year. Admiral held memorial services for every lost crew. She learned the names of every person who died. She wrote letters to their families back in human space, letters that would take years to arrive. And then she returned to the bridge and continued the mission. 6 years into the project came aboard the Remembrance. The ancient had watched the humans work with growing amazement. He had seen them sacrifice their lives, their health, their futures, all to save a species that was not their own. He did not understand why. "Your people are dying for us," he sang to Admiral. "They know the cost and still they work. Why do they do this?" Was silent for a moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal. It was the heirloom her family had passed down for 7 generations, the gift from an elder to her great-great-grandmother. "Do you know what this is?" she asked. Examined the crystal. His body hummed with recognition. "It is a gratitude stone. We give them to mark great kindness. I did not know any still existed." "My ancestor was a child on the Exodus Dawn," said. "Your people gave her this when you saved her ship. She kept it her whole life. She gave it to her daughter, who gave it to her son, who gave it to his daughter, all the way down to me. Every generation we told the story. Every generation we remembered what they did for us." She held up the crystal, and its gentle hum filled the space between them. "We are not dying for you," said. "We are repaying a debt that is 700 years old. Every human here chose to come. Every human here knows the story. We were nothing and you saved us anyway. Now you are dying and we will save you in return. It is simply what we do." Was silent. In all his 10,000 years, he had never encountered a species like humanity. A species that remembered kindness across centuries. A species that would reshape stars to repay a debt. "We did not expect anything in return," he sang softly. "We simply helped because helping was right." Smiled, "So are we." The work continued. Year after year, the impossible task grew closer to completion. And everywhere across the system, humans worked and sacrificed and died, not for glory, not for payment, but simply because they remembered a kindness given long ago. 7 years after the fleet arrived, the moment finally came. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Remembrance and watched her screens with steady eyes. Around the sun, 17 stellar engineering vessels held their positions in perfect formation. They had spent years preparing for this moment. Years of calculations and adjustments and small corrections. Now it was time for the final step. "All stations report ready," said her executive officer. Nodded, her heart was beating fast but her voice was calm. "Begin final harmonic correction sequence." Across 17 ships, engineers executed commands they had practiced thousands of times. Gravitational fields locked into place. Exotic matter projections reached deep into the star's core. For one terrible moment the sun flickered. Its light dimmed. its song fell silent. On the surface of Resonance Prime, every stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. Their sun, the heart of their world, had gone dark. Fear rippled through the survivors. Had the humans failed? Had the star died completely? Then, like a newborn taking its first breath, the sun ignited once more. The light that fell on Resonance Prime was different. It was pure. It was clean. The discordant frequencies that had poisoned the system for decades were gone, corrected at the quantum level by 7 years of impossible human engineering. The star sang a new song, a healthy song, a song of life instead of death. Felt it first. Standing outside the dampening caves for the first time in years, he felt the sunlight touch his crystalline body. There was no pain. There was no shattering vibration. There was only warmth and harmony and a frequency that made his ancient bones sing with joy. Across the planet, emerged from their shelters. They stepped into the sunlight and felt it heal them instead of kill them. Crystal structures that had been cracked and damaged began to mend. Colors that had faded returned. Songs that had been silenced for generations began to rise once more. The frequency plague was over. They would live. On the bridge of the Remembrance, Admiral allowed herself a small smile. Around her, officers were crying openly. Communications channels filled with cheers from across the fleet. 7 years of work, 7 years of sacrifice, and they had done it. They had fixed a star. "Admiral," said her communications officer, "you have a message from the surface. Elder Harmonist is requesting to speak with you." Opened the channel. Song filled her bridge, translated into human words by the communication systems. "Admiral," the ancient sang, "the sun sings true again. My people are saved. We do not have words for what you have done. No species has ever done such a thing for another. You have reshaped our star. You have given us back our future." "You gave us our future 700 years ago," replied. "We were simply returning the favor." The work did not end with the star. Over the following decades, humanity helped rebuild everything that had been lost. Terraforming ships repaired damaged ecosystems. Crystal forests that had shattered were from seeds that had been carefully preserved. Oceans that had been poisoned were cleaned and restored. The atmosphere itself was retuned, its harmonics adjusted to match the new song of the healed sun. Human engineers worked alongside architects to build new cities. These were not copies of what had been lost. They were something new, something that combined harmony with human practicality. Crystal spires rose toward the sky, but they were built on foundations designed by human hands. The buildings sang with frequencies, but they were powered by human fusion cores. Human teachers helped young rediscover the songs and traditions that had nearly been lost. During the plague years, an entire generation had grown up in silence, unable to learn the harmonics that defined their culture. Now human recording devices played back ancient songs, and children learned to sing them again. A permanent human embassy was established on Resonance Prime. It was not a building of stone or metal, but a living crystal structure grown by artisans as a gift. Inside, human diplomats and harmonists worked together, building a friendship that would last for. The survivors of the original rescue fleet chose to stay. Those whose lives had been shortened by the frequency plague spent their remaining years helping to rebuild. When they died, they were buried on Resonance Prime, their graves marked by crystal stones that sang gentle songs in their memory. To this day, children visit those graves and learn the names of the humans who gave their lives to save a species not their own. Before the fleet departed, requested a final meeting with Admiral. They met in the same place where Ambassador had first landed 7 years before. The caves that had once sheltered the last survivors were empty now. Their inhabitants returned to the surface. The sky above was blue and clear, the sun warm and kind. Presented with a gift. It was a crystal, similar to the one she carried but larger and more complex. Inside it, frozen in harmonic patterns, was a recording of the original distress call from the Exodus dawn. that had kept it for 700 years. We preserved this as a reminder, saying, a reminder of the small kindness we offered to strangers in the dark. We never imagined it would return to us 1,000-fold. Held the crystal gently. She could feel it humming against her palm, the ancient song of her dying ancestors calling for help across the centuries. We never forgot, she said. We never will. Song deepened with emotion. The galaxy knows this now, he replied. The story of what humanity has done here will spread to every corner of known space. Every species will learn that humanity remembers kindness and repays it by reshaping the heavens themselves. This is a truth that will echo for eternity. The human fleet departed Resonance Prime on a bright morning. Behind them, they left a healed world, a living species, and a debt finally repaid. They sang them a farewell song that could be heard across the entire planet, a harmony of gratitude that would never be forgotten. As the ships jumped away toward human space, the story began to spread. It traveled faster than any fleet, carried by messages and songs and whispered words from one species to another. A dying race had been saved, a star had been reshaped, and a debt 700 years old had finally been honored. Across the galaxy, species that had never met humanity began to pay attention. They learned the story of the Exodus dawn and the rescue. They learned that humans never forgot kindness, and that when they repaid a debt, they did so with the full might of their civilization. And slowly, a new understanding took hold among the peoples of the galaxy. A new piece of wisdom passed from elder to youth, from teacher to student, from parent to child. Be kind to the humans. Help them if you can, for they remember every kindness given, and when the time comes to repay it, they will move stars themselves to save you. This is the human way. This is the truth that Resonance Prime taught the galaxy. This is the legacy of a species that never forgets. Mankind remembers its debts, and their reply can reshape planets.